One of the things that has happened over the last 25 years that not many people saw coming is that Maine has become a destination for foodies. We have a lot of excellent restaurants, and behind every one of them is a talented chef or chefs. One of them is David Turin, the owner and chef at David's Restaurant in Portland and David's 388 in South Portland. Over the years, he has cooked for us many times in the 207 kitchen, and we felt it was time to sit down to hear his story as part of our occasional series called The Making of a Chef. Where did you grow up?
Toledo, Ohio.
Was your family into food?
They like to eat, but no chefs, nobody working in food service. No, my dad was a nuclear physicist and my mother was a calculus professor.
At what point did you start to get interested in food and cooking?
You know, I don't really know why, but I remember having a pretty bad fight with my dad. We were on a ski trip. I was 13 years old. I told my dad that I wanted to be a chef, and he was absolutely just furious about that. So I know at age 13, that's what I said. I wanted to be a chef, and really never varied from that.
What was your first job where you were around food or cooking?
The Milton Hill House restaurant in Milton, Mass. I was right out of high school. I started as a dishwasher and a busboy, and I got to cook.
Did that job make you think, okay, I like this, I want to pursue it, I want to go farther?
Yeah. And it's funny, I went from there, I worked at a place called the Mug and Muffin Cafe. I actually worked at one in the Boston Garden, which is kind of fun. Then I went on to Cornell and I cooked my way through college. I've only ever had one other job where I wasn't cooking.
That other job was a good one. Captain of a charter boat in the Virgin Islands. And actually, he still did some cooking on the boat. Was there ever a point where you said, this is going to be my career, or did you just sort of take it one job at a time with no grand plan?
Somehow I got it in my head I wanted to own a restaurant, and that was just my goal. I opened my first restaurant at 25, and dumbest thing I ever did, to be honest. I had no idea that being a chef and being a restaurant owner are two distinctly different jobs. I mean, yes, they're the same field, but it took me, 10 years and a couple of restaurants before I really realized that being a restaurateur is somewhat different than being a chef.
What kind of a restaurant did you open at age 25?
So crazy. So this is in 1983. I opened a French restaurant at age 25. It was a very formal restaurant. It was servers in tuxedos and gueridon carts and a cheese cart and a dessert cart, and we wore tall toques, which at that time were not paper, they were actually cloth. I had to learn to iron it.
I got the pepper crusted tuna, and I got the duck. In 1992, David Turin opened his first restaurant in Maine.
Very good, delicious. Oh, I thought it was excellent. I loved it.
I had the duck, it's almost gone. It was excellent.
I'm having the salmon, it's delicious.
David's, which is still going strong in downtown Portland. You mentioned that when you opened your first restaurant, you learned a lot about the difference between being a chef and the difference between being a restaurant owner.
So different, yeah.
What was the biggest lesson?
Well, the biggest lesson that has endured and probably is why we're still in business today is that chefs really are in the business of cooking what they're interested in and not necessarily what their customers want to eat. And the lesson that I learned very quickly, well, actually, I don't think I learned it quickly at all. The lesson I ultimately learned was you have to cook the food that your customers want to eat if you want to stay in business.
Along the way, David Turin opened David's 388 in South Portland. In all, he's owned a dozen restaurants in his career. And yes, he's still in the kitchen, although not as much as he used to be.
Probably 35% of my time is cooking now. And I mostly cook events and pop-ups. I'm in the kitchen only sporadically at this point.
In the restaurant business, Turin says, the difference between success and failure almost always comes down to execution. And the food doesn't have to be fancy to impress, a point that was reinforced when he invited one of his chefs to stay at his house so he wouldn't have a long drive home in a bad snowstorm.
So we get home, and I start cooking, and we're having a beer, and I make a grilled cheese sandwich, and just a fresh farm egg on top. And he looks at me and he says, "Chef, this is the best thing I've ever eaten in my life." You know, it's all about the place, right? I mean, it's the place. So like, there you are, it's the end of work, you've been working all night. Now you're having a grilled cheese sandwich with your friend and a beer, and it's like, it's the best thing you ever ate. So it's the execution.
One other note, in October, the trade group Hospitality Maine, which represents restaurants and hotels in the state, presented David Turin with its Lifetime Achievement Award. And earlier this year in Las Vegas, the American Culinary Foundation gave him its Presidential Medallion, which is given to exceptional chefs and industry leaders. So, what's next for this chef? Well, David Turin says he started thinking seriously about retiring a few years ago, but he quickly realized he really enjoys what he does and he doesn't want to stop. So he plans to keep cooking and keep working and keep running his restaurants.